Hello everyone. Welcome to the Silk Road Revival. Our today's guest is Professor Jason Choi from the University of Toronto. So, Professor Jason Choi is an assistant professor of economics at the University of Toronto. He has a joint Ph.D. in economics and finance from the University of Madison, and his research interests are in macroeconomics and finance. So, for part one, I had some questions related to your career, about yourself, like, and about your major. So, my first question, like, what initially drew you to macroeconomics and finance?
Um, let's see. Just before we start, what kind of level of study or most of the audience and you yourself? Are you guys like undergrads or
Uh, we started high school.
yeah,
Yeah.
I see. You just started high school. Okay. So, yeah, no, that just helps me when I'm going to explain
Mhm.
things. Okay, so actually, yeah, I think I probably all starts in high school for me too. When I was in high school, this was when the 2008 financial crisis was happening.
Mhm.
And I remember thinking, I see it all in the newspaper. I really wanted to understand what was happening, but I had no idea. It was really difficult when I read the newspaper articles. I'm like, I don't know what this means. And I thought it was really cool.
Mhm.
And then so when I went into undergrad, I wasn't initially thinking of doing economics. I was just taking politics classes, history classes, etc. And that's also when the Euro crisis happened around like 2010. So a lot of crises were happening during that time, and that actually is what made me interested in economics. And so I realized in undergrad taking these classes that I've always been more of a math science kind of person, but my interests were in the human world, not the natural world. And economics is exactly that. You're
Mhm.
using math and tools that are more generally used in science, but trying to understand the human world. And
Mhm.
that really kind of blew my mind because I always thought all social sciences were kind of like history or
Mhm.
politics. It was just like words. um, yeah, and then so I studied economics in undergrad, and then I also, even at that time, I didn't want to do a PhD or become a professor. I never had those thoughts. I
Mhm.
wanted to work at a central bank and
Uh-huh.
do economic policy because that's what initially drew me into it. And then so after I did my master's, I worked at the Federal Reserve, which is kind of my dream job.
Mhm.
And working there, I realized, wow, there's just so much of economics that I still don't know. And I don't think I'll be able to learn it just by working. I think I need to go back to school and learn some more. And the economists that I worked with at the Federal Reserve, they had PhDs and they were great role models for me.
Mhm.
I looked up to them and I thought, I want to be like one of them. And I always had the option of coming back and working in policy making
Mhm.
after I got a PhD. So then I did a PhD, and during the PhD, I kind of realized that the more you dig into this, it's just very, very large, the amount of
Uh-huh.
things we don't know. And I still, to be honest, feel like I don't really know things that well. And yeah, that's why I'm stuck behind the desk, still trying to just figure out basic things.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. And big papers can take years, and your motivation often shrinks over time. What do you do when a
Mm.
project stalls? Do you change the question, change the data, or change the turn? And can you give a concrete example? Mhm.
Okay, yeah. Um, yeah, they do take forever. Um, yeah, academic research, I think, for example, in the hard sciences, I think is a little bit quicker to turn around.
Mhm.
And that's why you see generally longer CVs. Economics is one of the disciplines where I think it takes the longest to write a paper, especially these days. To kind of give you a concrete example, this one paper is really the first paper that I worked on was a monetary policy paper that I started working when I was at the Fed. So this is 2015, and then it was published in 2021. So that's 6 years after we started working on it that it got published. So that thing was going on for 6 years. Now, we weren't working on it every day for 6 years, but we were working on it, paused it, submitted somewhere, got rejected, rethink it, and just kind of going through the cycle. And then I guess like my second paper that I kind of wrote, we started probably in 2020, and then yeah, that got published in 2026. That was another 6 years. So I guess on average, my papers have taken about 6 years. Yeah, it gets really discouraging, especially you're working on it for years and years, and you get negative results or rejections. I don't think there's a specific moment where any of these projects where we made big changes, but we're always making changes to kind of like correct the course, right? It's like, when you have the GPS and you miss a turn, it says recalculating. We are always recalculating the routes. And that's why it's really helpful to go to conferences and present your work at seminars, and people will let you know what they think about it, give critiques. And so yeah, I don't think I've ever changed the theory like 100% or even like used a completely different data set. And I think this is also important, probably advice for like grad students. When you start working on things, it will never, you don't have a guarantee that it's going to work out. So you kind of have to be selective a little bit on when you start projects, because you're going to start committing a lot of time into it, and then it's just going to be some costs. And to be honest, it's kind of hard to know if you have an idea, is this actually going to work? Is this worth spending years and then maybe not getting anything? That is something I think you learn in grad school. And it's hard to explain in words. You just have to kind of see a lot of research, do it a bit yourself to kind of get like a instinct feeling on. And this is what the really great economists are good at. They just know by feeling at the beginning before you start a project, oh, this is probably going to work or not.
Thank you, Professor. And I like these are like questions might be like, I mean, I kind of did myself, like, and if it's not kind of related, you may say that like no, like it's not my field, but yeah, like I
Okay,
try.
sure.
So, my next question, like, why do countries like USA do not make money with higher value? Maximum is like $100, and while countries like Uzbekistan, for example, keep making money with higher values, for example, 200,000 soms, and they keep making it. Yeah, like what's the reason?
Oh, so you're saying that in Uzbekistan, the actual paper bills that they print are getting larger in the biggest amount?
Yeah, like
Is
for
that what you're saying?
example, yeah, 10,000 soms, 50,000 soms, and 100,000 soms. Yeah, like that.
I see. Okay, I didn't know that. Well, that could be several reasons. So one thing I think when people talk about these kind of things, the example to go with is the U.S. The biggest one is $100 bills, right? But the euro has like a 200 version, and so there's been, I think, debates on, oh, the U.S. should have higher denomination as well, especially as inflation increases price levels. You want to have higher denomination bills, but I think So this is, I guess I should have prefaced, this is not necessarily my area of expertise, but
Uh-huh.
what I heard is that um, if you have bills that are larger denomination, the downside is that it basically gets used mostly for illegal activities.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think like, yeah, like international drug smuggling really wants there to be higher denomination bills. So I think that's the downside. And the
Mm-hmm.
upside is it's more convenient.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're telling me that Uzbekistan keeps increasing that top denomination, then it kind of sounds like it's because Uzbekistan has a inflation problem.
Uh-huh.
I guess I could just search that up right now. Oh, okay, I see. Yeah, you guys have double-digit inflation. Okay, yeah. So this is why.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so um, for reasons that I don't know yet, it Google tells me that Uzbekistan has double-digit
Mm-hmm.
inflation, so approximately 10, 12 percent inflation every year. And to give you an idea, in the US, Canada, and most of the Western developed countries, inflation is about 2%.
Mm-hmm.
So Uzbekistan has about 5 times higher inflation. Now, what that means is the price level across the entire economy
Mm-hmm.
is increasing.
Mm-hmm.
So not just like, oh, apples are getting more expensive, but like apple oranges, like literally everything is increasing.
Uh-huh.
And so logically, what that means is the $5 bill that you were using yesterday now is not worth that much, and you need another $5 bill or
Uh-huh.
whatever one piece of paper that will get me like a meal or something,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yeah.
Because the whole point of having paper currency is to make things convenient. Like you don't want to go to the store with like a basket full of pennies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because pennies don't buy anything in the US anymore. But a long time ago, you could buy a lot of stuff with pennies, right? Um, yeah, so I think that's why.
Uh-huh. Got it. And my next question, like some countries, like owed a huge amount of money from other countries, and
Hmm.
so cannot they just pay their debts by printing more money? Like,
That's a very good question. No, no, it's a very good question.
uh-huh.
These are the kind of questions that I mean, you were kind of laughing, so I'm assuming you think it's silly, but it sounds so obvious, right? And when I
Yeah.
was first studying economics in undergrad, I would ask exactly the same question. So you're in high school, I was in university already, and I was asking the same questions. I specifically remember one time I asked the professor, like, if we want to help like poor people and stuff like that, can't we just like print the money and give it to them?
Hmm.
That's what I used to think. But as you know, that causes inflation. So specifically with external debt, people know that that would be a problem. So
Mm-hmm.
international borrowing is actually done such that that can't happen. So
Mm-hmm.
what this means is when the U.S. borrows money, let's say U.S. is going to borrow money from Germany.
Uh-huh.
The U.S. goes to Germany and says, "Hey, can we borrow some money? I'll pay you back
Mm-hmm.
with some interest." And when you write those contracts, you have to specify what currency you're going to pay them back in.
Uh-huh.
You can't just come up with like South Korean wons. Germany's going to be like, "What the heck is this?" So in those contracts, the vast, vast majority of times, borrowing and lending between countries is done in US dollars
Mm-hmm.
for exactly this reason.
Uh-huh.
And for European countries, they can do borrowing in euros because people are kind of confident with euros. If Uzbekistan tries to borrow money, people countries are going to want to denominate it in dollars.
Mm-hmm.
So Uzbekistan can't just print US dollars, right? They
Uh-huh.
can print their own money, but not US dollars. And so as an investor, I know that, oh, they can't just print US dollars and give me back my money, but it's technically worthless. Yeah.
Got it. And also, my next question, like, given the recent pushes by, coalitions by, like, I like, is this question like related to BRICS? this organization. Like,
Okay.
yeah. So say they kind of try to replace or kind of break the dollar, but it
Mm-hmm.
kind of didn't work out. So what do you think is the reason?
Yeah, that's a good question. This question comes up like pretty often,
Mm-hmm.
and it's coming up again actually now because since the second Trump presidency, there's been a lot of worry about the U.S. debt. Can the U.S. pay their debt? Oh, it feels like they're going to have to print money, in which case the dollars are not very useful anymore. So then
Mm-hmm.
everyone's like, should we still have everything denominated in dollars? Um, but being the dominant currency, being the reserve currency of the world, is really difficult
Uh-huh.
because the reason that everyone wants to use the dollar is because everyone is already using the dollar.
Uh-huh.
And so you would have to kind of overnight snap your fingers and change everything, which is like
Mm-hmm.
impossible to do, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So there's a huge coordination component to this where because I already know everyone's using dollars, I'm also going to continue using dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't just show up one day and say, hey, let's change it to euros because
Mm-hmm.
I need to convince the entire world to do that at the same
Uh-huh.
time, right? Um, yeah, so that's one reason.
Mm-hmm.
Another reason is, to be honest, there isn't a good replacement for it.
Uh-huh.
So when earlier this year, people were talking about oh the dollar is like losing its dominant currency status, etc. People thought oh maybe it's going to switch to euro, oh
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's going to switch to the Chinese yuan. But those currencies, I feel like if there was a currency that was a second place but very close to the US dollar, maybe it could have flipped. But the second place right now is like really far behind. And what are they far behind in? There has to be a lot of characteristics you need to like check in order to become the dominant currency in the world. Number one, I think most importantly, is the world has to have extremely high faith that
Mm-hmm.
you are not going to devalue your currency all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of faith is it's hard to it's hard to convince.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to convince the entire world to put all of their money into this currency that they're not very confident in. So confidence in currency takes a long time to build. And I think that's part of the reason why so many people were upset with um, the US government policies that were kind of eroding this kind of
Mm-hmm.
trust. This is hard to get back.
Mm-hmm.
And the second thing, too, is it's a little bit more of an obvious type thing. If we want to use um, this new currency to do everything in. So that means, like US dollars are used by Americans within America and when America does stuff. But when Uzbekistan wants to borrow from other countries, they also do the borrowing and lending through dollars, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the US dollars is flowing over here as well. So what ends up happening is the US dollar is used everywhere in the world, is being floated around. Whereas let's say the Canadian dollar is only kind of used around Canada.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to be a dominant currency, you need to have a lot of the currency out there for
Uh-huh.
people to use.
Yeah.
And for you to do that, you basically need to increase the money supply.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem that happens when you increase the money supply is now people are not going to have confidence in your money. So it's kind of like the circular thing.
Uh-huh. All
So the
right.
only reason that the US is able to have enough US dollars around for people to use is because they're kind of already the dominant reserve currency, and so they're able to print a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know if that made sense.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Got it. But you mentioned that you can just like show up and just say that you like let's change the
Hmm.
currency, the dominant currency.
Hmm.
But this organization BRICS,
Hmm.
there are all these powerful countries like China, Russia,
Yeah.
Brazil, like they are all kind of powerful, and other small
Hmm.
countries also joined them. So why they couldn't like kind of broke
Yeah.
this uh,
That's a
US
good question.
dollar?
So yeah, the question could be like, oh, one country can't do it, but if all these big, pretty powerful countries come together, then they could probably do it, right? That's the
Hmm.
question. To be honest, in the world of global economics, BRICS, even BRICS, where you put all these countries together, is not even close to matching the U.S. economy.
Hmm.
That's just the world we live in right now in 2026.
Hmm.
The U.S. economy is much
Hmm.
much bigger.
No,
Yeah. So BRICS doesn't even come close, to be honest.
all right.
I feel like um, when people talk about this, the more likely potential competitors are euros or the Chinese yuan, because they're a bigger um, economy, but they have their own issues. And
Hmm.
so I don't think people really took the BRICS threat that seriously.
Uh-huh.
Um, and also, there's problems of if you have these multiple countries come together
Hmm.
and say they're going to maybe like issue a single joint currency or something like that,
Hmm.
people don't really believe that's going to work in the
Uh-huh.
sense that the countries have to not cheat and all uh, like agree and continue cooperating, if that makes sense.
Uh,
So, for example, if you look at euro right now, the eurozone, there are so many issues happening in the EU
mhm,
because all these countries are supposed to kind of move together in a unified way,
mhm,
but the like Greece wants to do their own thing and the UK left the EU, and so it's hard to like keep all these countries together.
uh-huh,
And so, for example, when I see BRICS, I'm like, what are the odds that Russia is going to continue being part of this and
mhm,
agreeing to what they signed?
mhm,
I think it's pretty low. In which
uh-huh,
case, people aren't going to believe any of the joint currency or whatever plans they have.
uh-huh,
It's like a prisoner's dilemma kind of situation.
uh-huh, got it. And so my last question for part one, like
Hmm.
like there is like environmental problem. So and countries know that, everyone knows that, but they still
Hmm.
print the paper money. Uh, but they have other sources, like they have other plentiful sources, like more than paper. So why do
Hmm.
countries still use paper as money? Cannot they use other alternatives?
I see. So you're talking about the literal material itself. So like using plastic or
Mhm.
metal or something like that.
Yeah.
um, yeah, that's a good question. I don't think I've really thought about this that hard. So I will say that now a lot of countries don't use paper money. So
Mhm.
for example, Canada a couple of years ago completely revamped all their currency. So now it's all plastic money.
Mhm.
It's like it looks like paper, but if you feel it, it's plastic,
Uh-huh.
and it doesn't rip because it's plastic. It kind of feels like very thick plastic bags. So countries are already doing that. Um, but I think the real answer on why it's not happening quicker is a little bit boring. The real answer is it takes a lot of money to change
Mhm.
because you have to like plan it and print all the money. You have to bring all the old money back,
Mhm.
destroy it, and like re give out the new money.
Mhm.
And it's just like takes a really long time, costs a
Mhm.
lot of money, blah blah
Mhm.
blah. Countries have other bigger problems that they're
Uh-huh.
dealing with, and so changing the paper currency is. not a very high priority, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the big issue here is we've already spent so much effort and time studying how to make paper
Mm-hmm.
not counterfeitable. And so if you change it to plastic, I think you have to kind of rethink how you do things so that people can't counterfeit your money. And so that's like another hurdle of, we got to like kind of think about this again. But we already know how to do it with paper. So maybe you just keep doing it with paper.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's kind of, yeah, I'm kind of putting words in the mouth of central bankers, but I think that's kind of the gist.
Got it. And and moving to part one, I had some questions related to your research paper called "Consequences of Misreporting."
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so my first question, what first made you to want to research why companies lie about their profits? Was it a specific accounting scandal in news or a gap in existing research that made you realize that the real punishment isn't fine itself, but losing the ability to fake the numbers?
Yeah, so this project kind of started when I was a grad student.
Mhm.
And when you're a grad student, you share your office with other students. And so one of my um, friends and colleague that we shared an office with, we were talking about um, things related to this area that we kind
Mhm.
of, it's a rabbit hole. Like a lot of these research ideas, you just like are talking to a friend, you're asking questions, and they're like, oh, that's because of this. And then you say, oh, but what about that? And then they're like, oh, I don't know. And then you kind of try to think about it together. The motivation for this, I think, was a little bit more literature driven in the sense that it wasn't something in the news. It was
Mhm.
more we read other papers in this area and we were like, oh, but we have some follow up questions that I don't think these existing papers are addressing. And so that's kind of how this came about. So to kind of like summarize that really quickly, um, in the finance literature, when people talk about why do companies lie about their earnings,
Mhm.
they say, like Q1 we made X amount of dollars, but they like lie about this,
Mhm.
and we know that you might get caught and be punished. So there must be a reason like you are doing this. And the literature has focused a lot on CEO compensation. So what this means is the CEOs, their salaries are literally tied to earnings report. So it's because it's in their contract. They get
Mhm.
bonuses, let's say, if the earnings are high every quarter. So that kind of makes CEOs want to lie just so
Mhm.
that their salaries are higher.
Mhm.
And so that has kind of been the dominant reason. And the one interesting aspect of that reason is that if you are a shareholder of a company, now you have a what economists call an agency conflict with the CEO. So the CEO is lying about their earnings, increasing his salary, but as a shareholder, I don't want him to do that because that doesn't
Mhm.
benefit me at all. It's not good for the company.
Mhm.
It's just good for his salary. And if anything, we might get punished and the company has to pay for it. And so this is just only risk. And so there's a shareholder and CEO wedge in some
Mhm.
sense. But we thought there might be another reason to do this where there isn't a wedge. Could there be a situation where shareholders also want you to cheat? They're like, yeah, CEO, cheat, please. And we thought, oh, that could be because the company earnings, they don't only affect CEO salaries, they also affect the borrowing costs of the companies. So the companies, they always borrow money to do stuff. And if they show that their earnings are high, then that means that they don't have to pay as much in, let's say, like interest costs. But if the company's earnings are really bad, then your interest rates are really going to be high. And so the CEO has an incentive to, when we have bad earnings, he doesn't want, like, things are already bad. I don't want the costs to increase as well. So maybe just this quarter we just pretend like it didn't go up that much so that we don't have to pay that much. And the weird situation here is, as a shareholder, I also wanted to do that because he's going to use that to help the company, right? The people who are kind of like losing out are the investors who are lending us money. And I don't really care about them. So this is a different reason for why earnings may be manipulated. And in this reason, unlike the existing explanations, there isn't a conflict between the CEO and shareholders. So the shareholders want there to be cheating. So it's kind of like there's this story a couple of years ago. There was a women's World Cup in soccer, and the Canadian team kind of got caught cheating. And the way they got caught was, I think the coaches had like drones flying around the other countries' practice sessions and were like looking at their strategies. But you're not allowed to do that. And they got caught, and it was a big scandal. And the Canadian coaches at the time, I remember them saying, everyone does that though. You know, you're not supposed to do it, but people do it. And that's true. Other countries are doing it. But I remember reading that and thinking, as a Canadian, yeah, I'm not really mad that you were cheating. I'm mad that you got caught cheating.
Alright.
You know, that's embarrassing. Like, just cheat well, right? So that's kind of, I say this because it's related to this, right? As a shareholder, you're like, yeah, I want the CEO to lie about their earnings a little bit. It's good for the company. Just don't get caught, right? Yeah.
Alright, I got it. So also, my next question: if we completely stop all companies from misreporting average company value drops by 3.1% and total
Mhm.
investment falls by 7.5%. Should regulators actually allow some misreporting if stopping it hurts business investment this much? And also, like, don't these companies benefit the country? Like, for example, if there is more company, there is like more workplaces, like more people can work there and kind of benefits the economy, also people to the
Mhm.
country. And so yeah, so should we not let them lie about their profits sometimes, like, or to stop lying completely, we need to support them financially when they need cash most, like those companies.
Yeah, yeah. You're right. Like, you want there to be more companies to do well. That's generally good for the economy, good for everyone. Um, the I think the result that you read in our paper, that cheating is actually good for the company, and that if you don't let the companies cheat, their value actually drops. That is a result only for the companies themselves. But the issue with this is, if one company does that, then it's that result. But if all the companies are cheating, then that creates a different issue. This is a very common problem in economics, right? Collective action problems. So it's okay if one person does it, it doesn't really affect things. But if everyone does it, then that's a different situation. So in this case, if I don't let a company cheat, they can't, they have to like pay high financing costs, etc. So it's bad for the company. So it's actually good to let them cheat. But if I let all the companies cheat, then there's a new problem. As an investor, literally everyone's cheating. There is not a single company that is honest. I'm not going to invest in any of this, right? So now suddenly all the companies can't get any investments from people. So yeah, so cheating is, quote, good for only one company if one company does it, but if everyone does it, then it's bad for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Got it. And the paper also finds that cash fines rarely stop companies from lying about their profits. So why is being banned from lying in the future a bigger punishment for a company than having a pay? Having to pay a fee.
Hmm. Hmm. Um, yeah, so that's not obvious just theoretically. It could be the other way around. And so that's kind of the point of writing down these models, estimating, and running counterfactuals. Um, yeah, that was kind of the result that we found numerically that the fees, I when we read it, it says like, oh, they paid 1 million something fine. It seems like a big number, but for companies, it's not that big of a number. Um, because for companies, how much they make in profit revenue and how much they may lose in profit revenue, these are much larger scales. And so, yeah, it turns out that the fine that the SEC is paying, asking for, is kind of not that much.
Got it. And my last question about your research paper is like increasing money fines, punishments, like penalties,
Hmm.
harms
Hmm.
companies without really stopping them from cheating. They keep cheating despite the punishment that they
Hmm.
receive. So should agencies like the CAEC stop giving out cash fines and instead focus on temporary bans and stricter oversight?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know. I don't have a yes or no question
Mhm,
based on research, so this is just my guess. Um, yeah, my guess is that our research is sort of pointing towards the result that you want the SEC to um, have stricter
mhm,
um, allowances on these things.
mhm. Oh, got it. So moving on, like I had also some questions about your research paper called "Exorbitant Privilege and the Sustainability of U.S. Public Debt." My
Hmm.
first question is related to the power of reputation. So paper shows that the U.S. Gets to borrow so much money not just because it gets cheap loans, but because it is afraid of losing its special status if it defaults. Why is the fear of losing this reputation so much more powerful at keeping debt manageable than the cheap loan rates themselves?
Oh yeah, okay. So this has several layers. I think you first have to understand what convenience yields are.
Mhm,
Um, so when countries borrow money, they
mhm,
issue bonds, right?
mhm,
And investors purchase bonds because it'll give them money back with interest. And so if I'm a person, I want to invest money, I'll go to the Canadian government, the Uzbekistan government, etc. And these countries will say, hey, we'll give you money back with 8% or
mhm,
4%, right? And I should look at that percent, and the only thing I should be thinking about is how much money am I really going to get back? Is
mhm,
Uzbekistan going to default on me? Is
mhm,
Canada going to default on me? And if I think they are, then I'm going to charge them higher interest rate,
mhm,
right? But it turns out that for some government bonds, like the US government bonds, there is like a different additional consideration that investors make. And the thing with bonds is if I purchase a bond, the only reason I like this is because I'm going to get money back with interest.
mhm,
Like I can't do anything with this paper. So the paper itself is really not of value to me. I can't like eat it. I can't
mhm,
like play with it or anything like that. It has no other, it doesn't do anything besides I get money back. That is different for US government bonds though. US government bonds, you actually can do stuff with it. Even if let's say like someone else is gonna get the money. So I'm just like holding on to it in the meantime. I can
mhm,
do stuff with this. And what they can do is, for example, in lots of parts of the financial markets, you need to post collateral to participate, meaning people are afraid that you may just like run away. So you have to kind of like put money like in the pot as like insurance and say, okay, if I run away, then you can have this. Okay. So, and then I'll just take it back at the end. A lot of places require this. And the only collateral that people accept is US government bonds because people know that that is the safest. There's a lot of it out there, etc. So if you show up and you say, "Yeah, I know you're worried I'm gonna run away. Here's my diamond ring." I'm like, what am I gonna do with that? Like, is that even real? I need to check it, and then I don't know where to sell diamonds and stuff. But if you say U.S. government bonds, I'm like, oh, okay, that's super simple. I know how to do that, all that. So that and other many reasons makes U.S. government bonds valuable. So people now want U.S. government bonds, not just because it gives you more money later, but because you can do stuff with it. And so what that means is when the US government is lending money, investors are willing to accept lower interest rates because they're thinking, I want high interest rates, but you're saying you're going to give me only a little bit of interest. Well, I guess I could do other stuff with this. So it does have value. So that's okay. I will accept the low interest rate. Whereas if a Canadian or Uzbekistan government tries to do that, investors are going to say, no, I want the high interest rate because your papers, I can't do anything with it. So,
Got it.
so that kind of gap is called the convenience yield.
All right. So next question. My next question is related to the getting the special status back. The paper shows that if the U.S. loses its special status forever after defaulting, its borrowing capacity drops significantly, but the impact is much smaller if it can regain that status within 10 years. So, based on the history, like when the British pound lost its global dominance, is it realistic to think a country could ever regain that status after defaulting, or would the loss be permanent?
Yeah, that's a good question. So this is like a counterfactual history, so it's hard to say exactly. So in the paper, we have different parameterizations, essentially saying if countries can get it back, how would the results change? If they can't, what will the results be? So we're kind of showing all the different cases, but we don't say that, oh, it can or can't be regained, because that kind of like just depends on so many other factors. But history says that no country has ever regained it, ever. And if you just kind of think about it logically, yeah, it seems difficult to regain that level of trust because it's not just you get back some trust, you are getting back to the most trustworthy currency in the entire world possible, right? And it's like getting back to number one is kind of a far stretch. Yeah.
Got it. And my next question is related to money creation and dollar abroad. So, in the paper, you only count foreign held dollars for seniorage because you assume Americans wouldn't stop using the dollars even if the US defaulted. But what if a major default actually pushed people at home to switch to foreign currencies or crypto? And how would adding that domestic flight change your model's findings?
Wow, that's a really good question, actually. Wow. Okay. I didn't think about that. Okay. Um. Yeah, I guess historically things like this have happened. So the issue is yeah, I guess the key is that if you default, then external investors are not going to use your currency, charge high interest rates, etc. So but then it doesn't really affect the people in the country. Um, so it wouldn't affect them per se. However, when countries default on other countries, very often what happens together at the same time is now I defaulted. Everyone is saying, oh, we have to charge this guy very high interest rate now because he's untrustworthy. And now if I have to pay everyone very high interest rate, this is financially really bad for me. So usually then governments resort to printing money because I can't pay, so I'm just going to print more money and use that. But then if I do that, then I get hyperinflation. And once you get hyperinflation, that's when people, the domestic people in the country, don't want to use your own money because this is going to be worthless. So you saw this kind of stuff happen, post-war Germany and like Argentina, etc. So yeah, it's not really the default per se, but if the default leads to hyperinflation, and history says oftentimes it does, then I think the domestic people might want to switch to something else. Yeah, but I was gonna say that there aren't clear alternatives, and so they may have to, yeah, because they can't switch to like the yuan or something like that. But I guess this is kind of the crazy scenario of the world where crypto might be appealing to people. Yeah, then I don't know how numerically the results will change, but it certainly makes defaulting way worse than it is. Because right now, in the assumption is if the U.S. defaults, it's only the external investors who are not going to use the dollars. But if you say that if the U.S. defaults, everyone in the world, including their own people, are not going to use the dollars, that's a huge loss, right? So that's probably going to amplify all of our effects. I'm not sure by how much, but it's going to make things worse.
Got it. And my last question about your research paper related to rival countries and future competition. So the paper mentions that Europe and China are trying to create their own global safe assets to compete with the USA. So if these competitors slowly take away America's dominance over time without the US ever defaulting, how would that gradual loss of power affect US borrowing limits compared to a sudden loss from default?
Okay, this is also a very good question. Okay, so the question is, how do you compare gradual loss versus sudden loss? Yeah. And kind of just generally speaking, obviously the sudden loss is going to be way, way worse. If you suddenly lose via defaulting, your interest rates are probably going to go up immediately. And the US already pays way too much in just the interest payments alone. So, given how much the US government is in debt right now, if you overnight increase their interest rates, they're very screwed. Yeah, I don't know. That's kind of like I'm exaggerating a little bit, but like end of the world kind of scenario. So I don't really know what's going to happen at the end of the world. Maybe the U.S. government will have to like print a ton of money to backstop it or something. That's going to make things worse. And so there really isn't yeah, the U.S. government is already in not a very great position, and people are very worried about it. So if there's a sudden loss and the default and interest rates go up because of that, that's going to be really bad for the U.S. economy and Americans, but it's also going to be very bad for everyone in the world because the U.S. Treasuries are the foundation of financial markets. So it's going to basically ruin everyone's economy for a bit. So the sudden one is really bad. The gradual one, yeah, if you change it gradually, then it just means that the U.S. government is able to borrow less, like
Mm.
gradually. Yeah.
And you said like it's going to affect badly to the world, but why kind of Europe and China are trying to do that? Like, I mean, if it's
Mm,
going to affect them badly, so why are they trying to do that?
yeah, good question. So, um, it I'm thinking about a scenario where, like you said, these countries are competing, and so they're kind of like taking away some of the US's market share and increasing their currency circulation. That's okay because the US government's not defaulting or anything, right? There's no financial crisis. It's just very slowly they're taking market share away, and that's okay. That just means that China and the EU is gaining. The bad part is if the US government defaults, right? There's a difference between their dominant currency slowly losing and then overnight they default. If they overnight default, that's an explosion. And so there's going to be a lot of damage to everyone else because of the explosion. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor. These were my all questions. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being our guest today. So, if you have any suggestions, like if to our like podcast, I mean, we are open to the criticism and your opinion. Yeah. So, if you have some, so yeah, opinion.
Um, no, I think this is really good. I think, yeah, first of all, these kind of outlets are not very common. And I've always thought that if you are a student that's interested in sciences, there is a lot of podcasts, YouTube channels, and things like that. But with economics and finance, A, there isn't that many. And then B, a lot of it, especially the more financial ones, are not true,
Uh-huh.
just to be honest. Um, and so I think having these kind of things is a very good idea. So I applaud you guys for this. One thing I think that might be helpful is um, economics is really complicated and it's like counterintuitive. It's hard to explain.
Mhm.
And so I think one thing that might be helpful is having a very clear um, understanding of who your audience is. Is your audience usually at the high school level or at the undergrad level or like adults, etc.? And
Yeah, I
what is kind of their
guess.
background?
I guess most of our like, high school. I guess yeah, high schoolers most.
Yeah. Um, yeah, because then your guest speakers, I feel like they should really adjust to speaking to high schoolers. Because I feel like if you're interviewing a lot of economics professors, they're usually not used to talking to high school students. And with high school students, I feel like you need to really explain the basics well
Mhm.
um, for them to like really understand it. So I guess the more concrete suggestion is make sure you tell the speakers that they should explain everything kind of at the average high schooler's understanding of economics. Um, Besides that, I thought you asked very good questions. Um, yeah, I don't really have that many suggestions.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was good.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you for your time again. So, bye. Good luck on your future research papers. Yeah.
Thank you. You too. It was a pleasure being on this. Thanks.